At my husband's funeral, my greedy daughter-in-law made a scandal by saying, "I have crocodile tears and shouldn't cry." What silenced her was the will. I'm glad to have you here. Follow my story until the end and comment the city you're watching from so I can see how far my story has reached. The church was filled with flowers, lilies and roses, James's favorites. Their sweet scent hung in the air, but all I could smell was the bitter tang of grief. My hands trembled as I sat in the front pew, staring at my husband's casket. 50 years together, gone just like that. "Are you all right, Mom?" My daughter Emily squeezed my hand, her eyes red-rimmed from crying. I nodded, unable to speak. What was there to say? James was gone, and no words could fill the void he'd left behind. My James. My rock for half a century. People had been arriving. All morning, old friends, colleagues, neighbors, all dressed in black, their faces solemn as they offered condolences. Some I barely recognized. Faces from the past that James had kept in touch with while I faded into the background, as wives often do. I spotted my son Michael entering through the side door, his wife Rebecca close behind him. My heart lurched at the sight of them. Michael looked so much like his father, tall, with the same strong jaw and kind eyes. But those eyes were cold today, distant. Rebecca guided him with a hand on his back, her designer black dress and pearl necklace looking more appropriate for a business meeting than a funeral. They hadn't visited James in the hospital, not once during those final weeks. Always too busy, too many excuses. "I should go say hello to your brother," I whispered to Emily. "Mom, don't. Not now." Emily's voice was tight. She and Michael hadn't spoken in months, not since the argument about James's medical care. Rebecca had insisted hospice was the best option, while Emily wanted to try an experimental treatment. The siblings had drawn battle lines, and I was caught in the middle, watching my husband slip away as my children fought. The service began. The pastor spoke of James's life, his accomplishments, his love for his family. I barely heard the words. My mind was filled with memories, our wedding day, the birth of our children, quiet evenings on the porch watching the sunset, holding hands even after decades together. Then it was time for family to speak. Emily went first, her voice breaking as she shared stories of her father teaching her to ride a bike, helping with science projects, walking her down the aisle. Michael declined to speak. Instead, he sat rigidly beside Rebecca, who kept whispering in his ear. Finally, it was my turn. My legs felt like lead as I approached the podium. I looked out at the sea of faces, some familiar, many not. James was, I began, my voice cracking. James was everything to me. My husband, my best friend, my partner in all things. Tears flowed freely now, and I didn't try to stop them. 50 years of love deserved these tears. We had our struggles, like any couple, I continued. But we always faced them together. That's what marriage is, standing together through the good and the bad. From the corner of my eye, I saw Rebecca lean over to whisper something to the woman beside her. Her lips curled in what looked like a smirk. I tried to focus on my words, on honoring James, but my voice faltered. "I will miss him every day for the rest of my life," I managed to say before the tears overwhelmed me. As I returned to my seat, I heard it. Rebecca's voice, not quite a whisper, loud enough for those around us to hear. "Look at those crocodile tears." She shouldn't even be crying. Everyone knows they were practically separated. The words hit me like a physical blow. I froze mid-step, unable to breathe, unable to move. Gasps rippled through the gathering. Emily half rose from her seat, fury on her face. "How dare you?" someone muttered. But it was Michael's reaction that cut deepest. He didn't defend me. He didn't contradict his wife. He simply looked away, his face flushed with embarrassment. Not for Rebecca's behavior, but for me. I somehow made it back to my seat, my entire body numb. 50 years of marriage, reduced to gossip and lies at my husband's funeral. And my own son, sitting silently while his wife tore my grief to shreds. The rest of the service passed in a fog. I didn't hear the final prayers or the announcements about the reception. I could only feel the stares, the whispers, the judgment, as we filed out of the church. Rebecca walked ahead with Michael, her head held high. She turned once to look at me, triumph gleaming in her eyes. But there was one more thing to endure, something neither Rebecca nor Michael knew was coming. James's will was to be read immediately after the service at his specific request, and despite the humiliation burning in my chest, I couldn't help but feel a flicker of something else as I watched Rebecca strut ahead. James had always been a meticulous planner, and he had seen through Rebecca long before I had. The first time I met Rebecca, alarm bells rang in my head. She was charming, too charming. Her laugh was practiced, her interest in our family history too eager. James squeezed my hand under the dinner table that night, a silent signal we'd developed over decades. He felt it too. She's just trying to impress us, Michael had insisted later when I carefully voiced my concerns. He was 38 then, beginning to worry he'd never find someone. Rebecca was beautiful, intelligent, and apparently smitten with him. Who was I to stand in the way of my son's happiness? The wedding was lavish, far more elaborate than Michael had ever wanted, but Rebecca had insisted, and somehow my practical, frugal son agreed to spend nearly his entire savings on the event. James and I contributed what we could, though Rebecca made it clear our offering was inadequate. Your parents don't really understand the importance of appearances, do they? I overheard her telling Michael during the reception. It's sweet, in an old-fashioned way. The changes in Michael were subtle at first. He called less frequently. Family dinners became monthly, then quarterly. When they did visit, Rebecca always had a reason to cut the evening short. Michael needs his rest. He's been working so hard, she would say, though my son's eyes showed he wanted to stay. Then came the excuses. Missed birthdays, canceled holidays, forgotten anniversaries. Always with profuse apologies. Always with promises to make it up next time. A next time that rarely came. When Emily gave birth to her first child, Michael and Rebecca arrived 3 days late. We had a charity event, Rebecca explained, not bothering, to hide her disinterest in her new niece. You know how important these connections are for Michael's career. The charity events, the business dinners, the networking opportunities, they all seemed to coincide with family gatherings. Rebecca made sure Michael's calendar was perpetually full, leaving little time for visits or phone calls. Then came the comments, like poison dripped slowly into Michael's ear. Your parents are so set in their ways, she would say within my hearing. They mean well, but they just don't understand how the world works now. Or, it's sweet how your mom still thinks. She needs to take care of you. Some mothers just can't let go, can they? And worst of all, they always make me feel like I'm not good enough for you, like no one would ever be good enough for their precious son. Michael would defend us weakly at first, then not at all. It was easier to agree, to keep the peace with his wife. The real breaking point came when James was diagnosed with cancer 3 years ago. The doctors were optimistic. They had caught it early. But the treatment would be aggressive, expensive. We should discuss care options, Rebecca said during a tense family meeting. These treatments will drain your retirement savings, and for what? A few more years? Even Michael looked shocked at her callousness. But Rebecca quickly backtracked, tears filling her eyes. I'm just worried about you both, she said, squeezing my hand with perfectly manicured fingers. I want what's best, and sometimes that means making hard choices. Somehow, she turned her cruelty into concern. And Michael, desperate to believe, his wife wasn't calculating the financial burden of keeping his father alive, accepted her explanation. When James recovered after the first round of treatment, I could see the disappointment in Rebecca's eyes. She had been counting on his illness to give them access to our savings, modest as they were. The questions started soon after. Had we updated our will? Was the house paid off? What about life insurance? All asked with practiced casualness, as if she were merely showing interest in our well-being. James saw through it all. One night, after another strained family dinner where Rebecca had grilled us about our finances, he took my hand and led me to his study. "I need to make some changes," he said quietly, pulling out a file of legal documents. "I've been thinking about this for a while." I nodded, understanding immediately. "Michael won't like it," James sighed, looking suddenly older than his 73 years. "Michael isn't thinking clearly, hasn't been for years, but someday he'll see the truth, and when he does, we need to make sure he's protected. The boy we raised is still in there. Tab, he's just lost right now." Over the next few months, James met with our attorney several times. He never told me the details, just that he was setting things right. When the cancer returned last year, more aggressive than before, he seemed almost at peace with it. "Promise me something," he said one night as I sat by his hospital bed. "Promise me you won't tell them about the changes to the will until after I'm gone. Rebecca will just try to make Michael contest it." "James, don't talk like that. You're going to beat this again." He smiled, but we both knew better. The treatment wasn't working this time. "Promise me, Tab." I promised. And I kept that promise through the horrible final months, through the hospice care, through the painful, drawn-out goodbye. I kept it when Rebecca stopped visiting entirely, claiming the sight of James in a hospital bed was too upsetting. I kept it when Michael came alone, awkward and guilty, unable to meet my eyes. I kept it at the funeral, even as Rebecca's cruel words cut through my grief. I kept it as we drove to the attorney's office, where James's last wishes would finally be revealed. Rebecca sat across from me now, impatience written across her face as we waited for the attorney to prepare the documents. She kept checking her watch, as if she had somewhere more important to be. "Let's hope this doesn't take too long," she whispered to Michael. "We need to start figuring out what to do with the house. The market is hot right now." Michael nodded, absently, but I caught a flicker of discomfort in his eyes. Some small part of him was still the boy James and I had raised, the kind, thoughtful son who had been gradually erased by years of Rebecca's influence. The attorney entered, files in hand, and Rebecca straightened, her expression shifting to one of appropriate solemnity. Emily sat beside me, her hand finding mine under the table. "Before we begin," the attorney said, "Mr. Holloway left specific instructions. There's a letter that must be read first." He handed me an envelope, my name written in James's familiar handwriting. "He asked that you read it aloud, Mrs. Holloway." My hands trembled as I opened it, wondering what final words my husband had left for us, and what bombshell was about to drop. My hands trembled as I unfolded James's letter. The paper felt worn, as if he had written and rewritten it many times before finding the right words. I cleared my throat and began to read. "My dearest family, if you're reading this, I've moved on to whatever comes next. Don't be sad for too long. We all knew this day would come, and I've made my peace with it. Before Mr. Donovan reads the legal details of my will, I want to explain my decisions. Throughout my life, I've tried to do what's right, not what's easy. This final act is no different. Tabitha, my love, you gave me 50 beautiful years. You stood by me through success and failure, through health and sickness. You were my anchor when the world seemed to be spinning out of control. Everything I am, everything I achieved, I owe to your unwavering support. Michael, son, I've watched with a heavy heart as you've drifted away from the values your mother and I tried to instill in you. I don't blame you. We all lose our way sometimes. I hope one day you'll remember who you really are. Emily, my girl, thank you for your strength, especially during my illness. Your mother will need that strength in the days ahead. I've made choices in this will that may surprise some of you. They weren't made in anger or spite, but with clear eyes and a full heart. I've built something over my lifetime, and I want to ensure it serves the right purpose after I'm gone. Love always, Dad. I folded the letter, my vision blurred with tears. The room was silent except for Rebecca's impatient finger tapping against the polished conference table. Mr. Donovan, James's attorney for over 30 years, cleared his throat and adjusted his glasses. Now, to the formal reading of the last will and testament of James Edward Holloway. Rebecca straightened in her chair, a smile playing at the corners of her mouth. She reached for Michael's hand, squeezing it in anticipation. To my wife, Tabitha Ann Holloway, I leave our family home at 1423 Maple Street, free and clear of any mortgage or lien, along with a monthly stipend of $4,000 for the remainder of her natural life. I nodded, having expected this much. Our home wasn't grand, but it was ours, filled with 50 years of memories. To my daughter, Emily Claire Holloway Jensen, I leave the sum of $100,000 and my collection of first edition books, which she has always admired. Emily gasped softly beside me. The books were valuable, both monetarily and sentimentally. To my son, Michael James Holloway, Mr. Donovan continued, I leave the sum of $10,000. Rebecca's head snapped up, her smile vanishing. That's it? She hissed. Michael sat frozen, confusion etched across his face. Mr. Donovan held up a hand, indicating he wasn't finished. However, I have established a trust fund in the amount of $250,000 for my grandson, Jacob Michael Holloway, to be used exclusively for his education and well-being. What does that mean, exclusively? Rebecca demanded. It means, Mr. Donovan explained patiently, that the funds can only be accessed for expenses directly related to Jacob's education, healthcare, and basic needs. Mrs. Holloway and myself are named as co-trustees. I watched as Rebecca's face flushed with anger. She had been counting on a substantial inheritance, money she could control. Instead, James had ensured that our grandson would be taken care of, but in a way that Rebecca couldn't exploit. As for the remainder of my estate, Mr. Donovan continued, including my investments, retirement accounts, and the proceeds from my life insurance policy, I leave to the James and Tabitha Holloway Foundation, which I have established to support medical research for pediatric cancer treatment. Rebecca shot to her feet. This is ridiculous. There must be some mistake. She turned to Michael. Say something. This can't be legal. Michael looked stunned, as if he'd been slapped. Dad left almost everything to charity? Mr. Donovan nodded. Mr. Holloway was quite specific about his wishes. The foundation was something he and Mrs. Holloway discussed for years, ever since your sister Sarah passed away from leukemia. Sarah, our firstborn. The daughter we lost when she was only 7. The pain had dulled over the decades, but it never truly went away. James and I had often talked about doing something meaningful in her memory, but I had no idea he'd actually gone through with it. This is outrageous, Rebecca sputtered. We'll contest it. Michael is his son. He deserves his fair share. Mrs. Holloway, Mr. Donovan said calmly, I should inform you that Mr. Holloway anticipated a challenge to his will. He left extensive documentation explaining his decisions, including detailed records of financial assistance already provided to Michael over the years, totaling well over $300,000. Contesting the will would make these records public. Michael's face paled. The loans he'd asked for over the years, money for business ventures that never materialized, for the down payment on the house Rebecca insisted they needed, for the luxury car she claimed was essential for making the right impression. James had never asked for repayment, but he'd apparently kept meticulous records. He can't do this, Rebecca whispered, but her voice lacked conviction now. It's not fair. It's perfectly legal, Mr. Donovan replied. And in my professional opinion, it would be unwise to contest it. Emily reached over and squeezed my hand. I squeezed back, grateful for her support. I hadn't known about this part of James's plan, but I wasn't surprised. He had always believed in doing what was right, even when it was difficult. The meeting concluded shortly after, with Rebecca storming out without a word. Michael lingered, looking lost. "Mom," he said, his voice small. "I didn't know. About the foundation. About Sarah." "There's a lot you don't know, Michael," I replied softly. "But maybe now you'll start asking the right questions." He nodded slowly, then followed his wife out the door. As Emily and I gathered our things, Mr. Donovan handed me a small envelope. "One more thing," he said. "James asked me to give you this privately." Inside was a single key and a note in James's handwriting. "For when you're ready. All my love, Jay." The morning after the will reading, I stood in my kitchen, going through the motions of making coffee. I'd barely slept, my mind replaying Rebecca's outrage, Michael's confusion, and the mysterious key that now sat on my counter. What had James planned that I didn't know about? My phone rang, jolting me from my thoughts. Emily's name flashed on the screen. "Mom, have you seen what Rebecca posted?" My stomach dropped. "No, what now?" "She's on Facebook, telling everyone that you and Dad manipulated him into changing his will when he was sick. She's saying you both took advantage of his weakened state to punish Michael." I sank into a kitchen chair, suddenly exhausted. That's absurd. James was completely lucid until the very end. "I know that, and you know that," Emily said, her voice tight with anger. "But she's painting herself and Michael as victims. She's even tagged family members and mutual friends." I closed my eyes, feeling a headache coming on. Let her rant. People who really knew your father won't believe it. But the damage was already spreading. Within hours, my phone was buzzing with texts and calls from relatives and acquaintances, some offering support, others questioning James's decisions. A few even suggested I do the right thing and share the inheritance with Michael, as if on cue. My doorbell rang. Through the peephole, I saw Michael standing on my porch, alone. He looked terrible, unshaven, dark circles under his eyes. I hesitated, then opened the door. "Mom," he said, his voice hoarse. "We need to talk." I let him in, motioning toward the living room. He sat on the edge of the sofa, looking uncomfortable in his childhood home. "Rebecca wants me to contest the will," he blurted out. "She says Dad wasn't thinking clearly because of the medication. She says we can prove he was being manipulated." "By me, you mean?" My voice was flat. Michael had the decency to look ashamed. "I didn't say that." "But she did." He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture so reminiscent of James that my heart ached. "She's upset. We were counting on the inheritance to pay off some debts." "What kind of debts, Michael?" He looked away. "Rebecca has expensive tastes, and her business ventures haven't been as successful as she claims. So she married you expecting your father's money to solve her problems? That's not fair, Mom. Isn't it? When's the last time she showed any genuine interest in your father? In me? In this family?" He didn't answer, which was answer enough. "Your father loved you, Michael. But he wasn't blind. He saw what was happening, how Rebecca was isolating you, how she was always angling for money." "Dad could have talked to me if he was concerned," Michael argued weakly. "Would you have listened?" I challenged. "Or would you have reported everything, back to Rebecca, who would have convinced you we were just being difficult, as usual?" His silence confirmed what I already knew. "If you contest the will," I said quietly, "you'll lose, and you'll destroy whatever relationship we have left." "Is that what you want?" "No," he whispered. "But I don't know what to do. Rebecca's furious. She says I have to choose between her and you." My heart broke for my son, trapped in a marriage built on manipulation and control. "That's not love, Michael. That's possession." He stood abruptly, I should go. I needed to see you. Michael, I called as he reached the door. Your father left something for you. Something that's not in the will. He turned, confused. What? A chance to remember who you really are. After he left, I sat alone in the quiet house, memories of James surrounding me. His favorite armchair, still holding the impression of his body. The collection of model trains he'd been working on. The family photos that chronicled our life together. I picked up the mysterious key again, turning it over in my hands. What had James left for me to find? That evening, as I was sorting through a stack of sympathy cards, the doorbell rang again. This time it was Rebecca, perfectly put together in an expensive suit, her face a mask of practiced concern. "Tabitha," she said, her voice syrupy sweet. "I thought we should talk, woman to woman." I almost shut the door in her face, but curiosity got the better of me. I stepped aside, letting her enter. She glanced around the living room, assessing everything with a critical eye. This house has so much potential. With the right renovations, it could be quite valuable. "It's not for sale," I said flatly. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. "Of course not, but let's be practical. This place is too big for just you, and maintaining it will be expensive." "I'll manage." She sat without being invited, crossing her legs elegantly. "I'll be direct. Michael deserves his fair share of his father's estate. James wasn't thinking clearly when he made those changes. If you agree to contest the will with us, we could come to an arrangement that benefits everyone." "Everyone meaning you," I said. Her smile tightened. "This foundation is a lovely idea, but charity begins at home, don't you think? Michael is James's son, his only son." "James knew exactly what he was doing," I replied. "And so do you, Rebecca. You've never cared about this family. You've only cared about what you could get from us." Her facade cracked, just for a moment. "You've never liked me. You've poisoned Michael against me from the beginning." "No, Rebecca, you've done that all. By yourself." She stood, smoothing her skirt. "Fine, have it your way. But remember this, Michael will choose me, he always does. And when he does, you'll be completely alone." After she left, I sat in James's chair, feeling the weight of her threat. Was she right? Would Michael choose her, as he had so many times before? The thought of losing my son completely made my chest ache. That night, I dreamed of James. We were young again, walking along the beach where we'd spent our honeymoon. "Trust me," Dream James said, smiling that familiar smile. "Everything will be all right." I woke with tears on my face, but also with a sense of peace. Whatever came next, I would face it with the strength James had always seen in me. The next morning, I received a text from Michael. "Rebecca wants me to move out of state. She says there's nothing for us here anymore." My heart sank. So this was her plan, to physically remove Michael from whatever influence I might still have over him, to complete the isolation she'd been working toward for years. I stared at the phone, unsure how to respond. Then my eyes fell on the mysterious key James had left me. It was time to discover what it unlocked. In our bedroom closet, behind James's suits, was a small safe I'd never paid much attention to. James had kept important papers there, but I'd always left that kind of thing to him. With trembling fingers, I inserted the key into the lock. Inside was a manila envelope with my name on it. And as I opened it, I finally understood James's last gift to me, and to Michael. It was evidence. Damning evidence that would change everything. With shaking hands, I spread the contents of the envelope across the dining room table, the same table where our family had once shared meals, celebrated birthdays, played board games on rainy Sundays. Now it held the proof of Rebecca's deception. Bank statements showing large withdrawals from Michael's accounts, transferred to accounts solely in Rebecca's name. Credit card statements revealing purchases of luxury items while she claimed they were struggling financially. Screenshots of private messages between Rebecca and her friends, mocking our family, calling James and me walking ATMs, discussing how she planned to cash in once James passed away. Most damning of all was a consultation letter from a divorce attorney, dated just 3 months ago. Rebecca had been planning to leave Michael after she secured what she believed would be his substantial inheritance. I sat heavily in a chair, my heart breaking for my son. How would I tell him? Should I tell him? James had left this evidence. For me, but using it would devastate Michael. Yet hiding it might condemn him to years more of Rebecca's manipulation. Before I could decide, my doorbell rang again. I hastily gathered the papers, returning them to the envelope before answering. It was Michael, looking even worse than before. His eyes were red-rimmed, his clothes rumpled. "Mom," he said, his voice hoarse. "Can I come in?" I stepped aside, noticing the small suitcase beside him. "What happened?" He walked past me into the living room, sinking onto the couch like his legs couldn't hold him anymore. "Rebecca and I had a fight. A bad one." I sat beside him, waiting. "She wants me to cut ties. With you completely. She says either I choose her or I choose you." He ran a hand through his disheveled hair. "And when I wouldn't agree right away, she said some things." "What things, Michael?" He looked up, his eyes shining with unshed tears. "That she never really loved Dad. That she was just waiting for him to die so we could get the money. That you and I were nothing but stepping stones to the lifestyle she deserves." I took a slow, careful breath. "And what did you say?" "I left." He gestured to the suitcase. "I just grabbed some clothes and walked out. I didn't know where else to go." Despite everything, my heart swelled with a cautious hope. This was the first time in years Michael had chosen me over Rebecca. But I knew it wasn't that simple. Rebecca wouldn't let him go without a fight. "You can stay here as long as you need," I said. He nodded, then noticed the envelope I'd set on the coffee table. "What's that?" I hesitated. Was it the right time? Would it push him away again? But looking at my son, truly seeing him for the first time in years, vulnerable and hurt, I knew I had to trust him with the truth. "Your father left this for me," I said, opening the envelope. "I think he wanted me to use it if necessary." Silently, I handed him the documents. I watched his face as he read through them. Shock, disbelief, anger, and finally, a deep, overwhelming sadness. "How did Dad get these?" he whispered. "I don't know. He never told me about any of this." Michael set the papers down carefully, as if they might burn him. "All this time," he said, his voice breaking. "All this time, I defended her. I chose her over you and Dad. I believed her when she said you were trying to control me. That you didn't want me to be happy." "She was very convincing," I said gently. "That's no excuse." He stood suddenly, pacing the room. "I should have seen it. I should have known who she really was." "Michael, no, Mom. I was blind, willfully blind, and I hurt you and Dad because of it." I crossed the room to him, taking his hands in mine. They were so like James's hands, strong, capable. "Your father never stopped loving you. Neither did I." His shoulders slumped. "How can you forgive me so easily?" "Because that's what parents do." I squeezed his hands. "And because I know the real you is still in there? The boy your father and I raised. Kind, thoughtful, honest. Rebecca didn't destroy him. She just buried him for a while." Michael pulled me into a hug, something he hadn't done in years. For a moment, we just stood there, mother and son, beginning the long process of healing. That night, after Michael had settled into his old bedroom, I sat in James's chair, feeling his presence all around me. You knew, didn't you? I whispered, to the empty room. You knew she would push too far eventually. The next morning, over coffee, Michael and I began the difficult conversation about what came next. He was determined to file for divorce, but worried about Jacob. Rebecca will try to use him as leverage, he said. She already threatened to limit my access if I don't do what she wants. Before I could respond, my phone rang. It was Emily. Mom, have you seen Facebook? She asked without preamble. Rebecca's posting horrible things about Michael now, claiming he abandoned her and Jacob. She's telling everyone he's mentally unstable, that he needs help. Michael's face hardened as I relayed Emily's message. That's it, he said. I'm not letting her control the narrative anymore. He pulled out his phone and began typing furiously. I watched as my son, who had been so passive for so long, finally took a stand. I've been silent too long, he read aloud as he typed. Out of respect for my late father and my family, I've let rumors and accusations go unanswered. But I can't stay silent anymore. The truth is that my marriage has been built on deception and manipulation. My wife married me for financial gain, not love. My parents saw what I refused to see. Dad, if you're watching, I finally understand what you were trying to tell me. I'm sorry it took me so long. He hit post, then looked up at me. It's not enough, but it's a start. Within minutes, his phone began buzzing with notifications, friends expressing support, family members offering help, and of course, a string of furious texts from Rebecca. She's threatening to take Jacob and move out of state, Michael said, his voice tight with worry. She says I'll never see him again. I thought of the evidence in the envelope, the financial misconduct, the planned divorce, the private messages revealing Rebecca's true character. James had provided us with everything we needed. She won't take Jacob anywhere, I said with newfound determination. Your father made sure of that. Michael looked at me, a spark of hope in his eyes for the first time in days. What do you mean? I mean James Holloway was always 3 steps ahead of everyone else, I replied, reaching for the envelope, and he left us a roadmap for dealing with Rebecca. As I laid out the plan James had put in motion before his death, I felt a warmth spreading through me. My husband was gone, but his love and protection surrounded us still. He had known this. Day would come, and he had prepared for it with his characteristic thoroughness. For the first time since James's diagnosis, I felt the weight on my shoulders lighten. We had a long road ahead, but we would walk it together, mother and son, with James's wisdom guiding us. Rebecca had underestimated all of us. James with his quiet foresight, me with my patient strength, and Michael, whose true character was finally re-emerging from the shadows. Her reign of manipulation was over. That night, as Michael and I sat looking through old family albums, my phone pinged with a message from Mr. Donovan. Papers filed as per James's instructions. Court date. Set for custody hearing. Rebecca has been served. Michael and I exchanged a look of cautious optimism. The battle wasn't over, but for the first time, we were fighting it together. 1 year after James's funeral, I stood in our backyard, watching as Jacob chased a butterfly across the freshly cut grass. My grandson had turned 8 last month, celebrating with a party that brought together our newly healed family. Michael flipped burgers on the grill that James had loved so much, while Emily arranged a platter of fresh fruit nearby. The past 12 months had been challenging but transformative. Rebecca hadn't surrendered easily. She'd fought the divorce with a viciousness that shocked even those who knew her well, spreading lies about Michael's mental health, claiming financial hardship, even attempting to turn Jacob against his father. But James's evidence had proven decisive. The financial records showing Rebecca's deception, the consultation with the divorce attorney, the damning messages discussing her plans to leave Michael after securing his inheritance, they painted a clear picture of a calculating woman who had married for money, not love. The judge had awarded Michael primary custody, with Rebecca granted supervised visitation until she completed counseling. She'd left the state shortly after, moving to California with a new boyfriend. Her visits with Jacob had become increasingly infrequent. "Mom," Michael called from the grill. "These are almost ready." I nodded, smiling as he expertly flipped a burger just the way James had taught him. My son had changed so much over the past year, shedding the passive shell he'd developed during his marriage to Rebecca. The real Michael, thoughtful, kind, confident, had finally re-emerged. He'd moved into a small house just 3 blocks away, close enough for Jacob to walk to my place after school. Our relationship had healed slowly, painfully at times, as we navigated decades of hurt feelings and misunderstandings, but we'd persevered, just as James would have wanted. "Grandma, look," Jacob called, holding up a caterpillar he'd discovered. "Can we put it in a jar and watch it turn into a butterfly?" "Of course, sweetheart," I replied. "Your grandfather would have loved that. He always had jars of interesting creatures when your dad was little." Jacob grinned, revealing a missing front tooth. "Dad said Grandpa James knew everything about nature." "He knew quite a lot," I agreed, feeling the familiar ache that came whenever James was mentioned. The pain had softened over time, transforming, from a sharp stab to a gentle ache, like an old injury that flares up in cold weather. After lunch, while the kids played a board game on the patio, Michael helped me clear the dishes. We worked in comfortable silence until he spoke. "I found something yesterday, going through some old boxes in the garage." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, worn leather notebook. "I think it's Dad's journal." My heart skipped a beat as I recognized it. James had carried that notebook everywhere during the last year of his life, jotting down thoughts and observations. I'd assumed it was lost. "Have you read it?" I asked. Michael shook his head. "It didn't feel right without you." We sat at the kitchen table, the journal between us. With trembling fingers, I opened to the first page, dated shortly after James's diagnosis. "I've been thinking about legacy," James had written in his familiar slanted handwriting. "Not the money or property. Those are just things. The real legacy is the values we pass down, the lessons we teach, the love we share that continues after we're gone." I read aloud, my voice soft. Michael listened intently, occasionally wiping away a tear. Page after page revealed James's thoughts during his final months. His concerns for Michael, his pride in Emily, his undying love for me, and his careful planning to protect us all after he was gone. Near the end of the journal, one entry stood out. "Tabitha thinks I'm being too harsh with the will. She believes Michael will eventually see through Rebecca without my intervention. Perhaps she's right. She usually is about these things. But I can't leave it to chance. I've seen the pain in my son's eyes, the way he's torn between his wife's demands and his love for his family. I have to give him a clear path back to us, even if it means making difficult choices now. I have to trust that the young man Tabitha and I raised is still in there, fighting to get out. And when he does break free, we'll be waiting with open arms, ready to welcome him home." Michael's shoulders shook with silent sobs. "He knew," he whispered. "He knew I was trapped, and he found a way to free me." I reached across the table and took his hand. "Your father always saw more than he let on. He believed in you, even when you didn't believe in yourself." Later that evening, as the sun set over the backyard where James and I had spent countless summer evenings, I sat alone on the porch swing he had built decades ago. The journal rested in my lap, open to the very last entry, dated just 3 days before his death. "My dearest Tabitha will find this someday, when the time is right. My love, you have been my heart, my soul, my very breath for 50 years. When you read this, I will be gone. But please know that my love for you continues beyond this life. The hardest part of leaving is knowing I won't see your smile, feel your touch, hear your laugh. But I go peacefully, knowing I've done everything I can to protect our family. Remember what I always told you about gardening? Sometimes you have to prune away the diseased branches so the healthy ones can thrive. Rebecca was the disease-threatening, our family tree. By the time you read this, the pruning will be done and healing will have begun. Trust the process, my love. Trust in Michael. And most importantly, trust in yourself. You are stronger than you know. Until we meet again. All my love, James. Tears flowed freely down my cheeks as I closed the journal. The porch swing creaked, gently, almost as if James were sitting beside me, pushing it with his foot as he always had. Grandma? Jacob's small voice startled me from my reverie. He stood in the doorway, his pajamas rumpled, his stuffed bear tucked under one arm. Dad said I could stay with you tonight? Is that okay? I wiped my eyes and smiled. Of course it's okay. You can sleep in the guest room, or... I hesitated, then continued. You can sleep in Grandpa's study, on the pull-out sofa. He always said, it was the best spot in the house for sleeping. Jacob's face lit up. Really? In Grandpa's special room? Really. He'd like that, I think. After tucking Jacob into the sofa bed, surrounded by James's books and model trains, I paused in the doorway. My grandson's tousled head rested on the same pillow where James had taken countless afternoon naps. The circle of life, continuing despite loss and grief. Michael appeared beside me, watching his son sleep. Thank you, Mom, he whispered. For everything. I leaned against him, drawing strength from his presence. Your father would be so proud of you. Of all of us. Together. We closed the study door softly and walked back to the porch. The night was warm, the sky clear and filled with stars. James had loved nights like this. Do you think he knew how it would all turn out? Michael asked, gazing up at the constellations. His father had taught him to identify as a child. I thought of the journal, of James's careful planning, of the way he had orchestrated his final act of love from beyond the grave. Yes, I said with certainty. He knew exactly what he was doing. He always did. As we sat in comfortable silence, I felt a sense of peace wash over me. The pain of losing James would never completely disappear, but it had been transformed into something beautiful, a renewed family, stronger than before, bound together by love that transcended even death. James's last act of love had not been the will that silenced Rebecca's cruel accusations. It had been the path he laid out for us, guiding us back to each other when we needed it most, and for that, I would be eternally grateful.